Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.5%, APR 4.78%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 2% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Ladies and gentlemen, broadcasting live and worldwide, straight out of Brooklyn, New York, this is the show that turns sci-fi into reality. You're listening to the Bruce Montalvo Show, live and broadcasting worldwide from the epicenter of cool Brooklyn, New York. Thank you for joining us, folks, on a very entertaining episode of the Bruce Montalvo Show. Joining me today is a very special guest. Today is August 19th, 2015, and at this time I would like to introduce my special guest on today's program. He is a professor of AI and robotics from Sheffield University in England. My guest on today's program is none other than Professor Noel Sharkey. Hello, Noel. Thanks for being on the show today.
Hi, Bruce. Good to be here.
Great to have you on. Now, let's begin the program. I was watching bloopers of the DARPA robotics challenge, and these machines, to me, they look so clumsy. Their movements are so jerky. I thought to myself, are these the killer robots that are supposed to take over the world? These Terminator robots. I thought, where are they keeping the real killer robots? What did you make of that DARPA robotics challenge, Professor Sharkey?
Well, for me, they were quite incredible, but I can see that if you're not a robotics expert, you might have higher expectations.
That's right.
I mean, that's the state of humanoid robots. They're not very good still. They're not very good at vision. They're not very good at very much yet. But Google's pumping a lot of cash into it, so they will get better. But they're not what we think of as killer robots, though. That's kind of belongs to the science fiction myth. The kind of killer robots we're worried at the moment look like fighter jets or submarines or battleships, or tanks, trucks,
right.
Machine guns. Those are the things.
Right.
It'll be some time before we get humanoid robots on the battlefield because, first of all, they'd have to stay upright.
Exactly.
And they'd need to be able to open doors before they could take over the world, I would suggest.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, they were falling all over the place. It was quite comical, actually.
Yes, it is, yeah. But for me, that's the state of the art.
Exactly. Now, have you seen that latest DARPA robot? Actually, I believe it's the Atlas robot they've been working on for quite some time. Have you seen that footage of him running through the forest? I mean, that looked a little terrifying.
Yeah, I've seen that footage running through the forest. What I couldn't work out, though, and I'm not sure was it speeded footage? Because that's a thing they often do with robot footage. So speed it up a bit so it looks faster than it is. And also, you notice that it was very short pieces, so there were a lot of cuts in the edit. And I guess they probably cut the bits out where it fell on its face.
Right. You there, Professor?
I'm there, yeah. I keep hearing you cutting away, so I'm not sure if I'm still linked in or not.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But I like that robot. I mean, I like that sort of robot. That robot is not going to end up in DARPA hands because it belongs to Google now.
Right.
And what they said was they'd see the current DARPA projects out, and then they'd stop. They wouldn't take any further military contracts. And I actually believe them.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a big money to Google, this kind of contract, really. It would be big money to Google if they took a NASA contract to let NSA contract to let NSA eavesdrop on everybody. But apart from that, this is only small change in Google's pocket. I mean, they spent something like several billion last year in the last 2 years on buying robot companies. So they're not going to take small amounts of military funding. And they have the Shaft robot. Now, the Shaft robot is the Japanese robot that won the DARPA Rescue Challenge last year. It was the only real contender. And Google bought that company and immediately removed it from the contest, despite being offered $2 million funding to I don't think they want to be involved in military stuff.
I certainly hope not, because they got that slogan Google does, that they're not evil or something. But I don't know. It's scary stuff they're developing over there.
Do no evil.
That's right. Now, Professor.
But they're an advertising company, and they really have to worry about their reputation. I mean, if they started getting involved in military stuff, they'd lose so much revenue, I think. And that's what they'd be worried about more than anything else.
Absolutely. Now, Professor Sharkey, tell us about that robotic competition you ran in China back in 2004. And who do you believe is more advanced in the field of robotics, in your opinion? Is it China or the U.S.?
Neither. I think that it's Asian, certainly. I think Japan's pretty good, but they're not very good at functional robots. Although that company Shaft that won the DARPA Grand Challenge was Japanese. And it's South Korea we have to keep our eye on, really.
Oh, wow.
It's coming on very, very fast. They won the DARPA Rescue Challenge this year, and they look like they're really going for big developments. They had a goal at one point about 2 years ago of having every household in South Korea with robots by 2015. Well, it's not going to happen, but you can see the kind of drive they've got. They really see that as a great way forward commercially. So I would say they were probably the most advanced. The competition I ran in China certainly wasn't for killer robots. It was a competition where we taught the Chinese how to make robots out of recycled material. So motors from printers, motors from drills, that kind of thing, pretty easy to do if you know how to do it. And we took 25 teachers, technology teachers, and taught them how to do this. So we set up a competition, and we put them under a lot of pressure. We were on a lot of TV channels, and they were very heavily, deliberately, to give them an idea of what a competition's like. But after the first afternoon, we taught them how to build little autonomous sumo wrestling robots. And so they had a competition that afternoon on television. So it was quite an extensive thing. But the challenge itself was quite good. It was robots competing with each other to put little balls in a circle. And they had to grab the balls from the walls. They had to release a little robot, first of all, that opened the gate to let them in. So it was quite a complicated challenge. But robots aren't that hard to make. These were not roboticists. They were just technology teachers, and 1 week's instruction, and they were able to construct really good robots. So that's one of the worries about who could make these. And the answer is nearly anybody.
Wow. Have you seen that hotel, I believe, that's in Japan, where most of the attendants are robots? They even have like robotic dinosaurs?
Yeah, but the funny thing about that hotel is the work that you'd want the robots to do, like cleaning the hotel rooms, cleaning the bathrooms, making the beds, doing all the menial work, is actually still done by humans because robots aren't up to it.
Right, so I guess we don't have to worry about them taking our jobs, right?
Oh, we might have to worry about them taking our jobs, but they won't be making our beds anytime soon. I am actually very worried. That's one of the big worries at the moment, is actually AI in general taking jobs.
Right.
50,000 stockbrokers in Wall Street have lost their jobs in the last year or so. And, so it's white-collar jobs as well. And I did a lecture tour of China last year, and the biggest question that every single large audience asked involved with was, what about robots taking our jobs? Because it's happening in a big way in China, a very big way. Everything from assembling iPhones to making cars is all being done by robots.
Wow. Now, Professor, what are some of the advances you see developing in nanotechnology? I mean, I've seen everything from drone mosquitoes to robotic birds, you name it. And could they use these things to spy on individuals?
Well, to a certain extent, I mean, the idea of a nanorobot is still slightly ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Because a nanorobot is really tiny. And when they talk about a nanorobot, they really mean a micro-robot because you can see them. I mean, a nanorobot, a really tiny robot inside your body, for instance, would have real difficulty getting through water molecules. So that would be one of the problems. But these small robots, so talking micro-robots, yes, they could spy on you. They could do a lot of things. But at the moment, there's still some problems because what the problem is, when you've got a flying device, the amount that it can carry is called its payload. And a lot of these really tiny ones, the payload is itself. So it couldn't carry very much, maybe a paperclip. But a camera might still be a bit difficult, although you get really tiny cameras. And with nanotechnology, the cameras are getting smaller and smaller. Although even with cameras, you have to make sure you couldn't put a camera on a nanorobot, for instance, a real nanorobot, because the lens would be smaller than the wavelength of light, so it wouldn't be able to see anything. But if you have a very small camera, I guess you could do surveillance. It's a little bit worrying. I mean, one of the scariest projects I think DARPA was involved with project was they had I've seen one as well. They took these giant African beetles, flying beetles, and they're about the size of the palm of your hand. And they put electronics into the beetle so that they could twitch the wing muscles. And doing that, they were able to fully control its flight, so they could, determine where it was flying.
Right.
So if you were able to mount it'd be very difficult. You'd need a very small camera. But if you're able to mount a camera on one of those, it would just land in a tree somewhere and survey anywhere.
That's right.
I mean, I don't have too much trouble with the military using surveillance for, official conflicts or wars. But I have much more concern about this kind of technology imposing on my human rights and your human rights.
Absolutely.
Being used by governments. That's the real worry.
Absolutely. It's a direct violation of, here in America, our Fourth Amendment right.
Yeah, right. And but it's I don't know if CCTV cameras are a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights or not, but they're getting pretty widely used in the United States now.
They definitely are. Now, Professor, right.
We've had them for so long now where everybody's used to them. I mean, our city centres are all packed with them, so there's nothing new about them. Especially
here in New York, where every other street I walk on, there's 9 cameras per street corner.
You see, this is one of the great surprises in my life. I mean, I used to live in the States, and it's a country that I thought would never tolerate that. So I don't understand how that could have happened there.
They're just keeping us dumbed down over here with Coca-Cola and all sorts of products, mind-numbing products, and television.
But the big card they use, though, is the terrorist card. So you just say, there could be a bomb attack or there could be hidden explosives, so we've got to use these cameras.
That's very true. Now, Professor, I wanted to ask you, do you believe humans will merge with robots? Like, let's say in the future, 100 years from now, will there be a human-robot hybrid? I mean, is that the only way for humanity to obtain immortality?
I don't necessarily think it would obtain mortality by doing that, because the bits of humanness will still rot. I mean, the main thing you want to maintain is your brain, I suppose.
That's right.
Now, I won't be alive then, but I would not want that myself. I like to be fully human, except that, I don't know, we're already seeing real major advances, and good thing through robot technology. I mean, it's getting really sophisticated. And we're seeing a lot of stuff like, pacemakers. You can be full of electronics really yourself, but you're still a human, I think, at that point. It's when it starts implanting into your nervous system, and I don't know how that's going to work or whether it will even be allowed, because we don't even allow embryo research in stem cell research in Europe. We allow the research, but nobody's allowed to grow the stem cells themselves. So I don't know what it will be, what regulations will appear about people amalgamating with robots. It would certainly be a good way of making the robots smart, that's for sure.
Definitely.
I don't really get the point of it. I know some people want it, but I don't get the point of it. I mean, I would be happy to wear an exoskeleton, certainly. There's some wonderful exoskeletons now being developed in Japan where they lease them to care homes so that somebody, instead of having a wheelchair, has this leg strapped onto them and it reads neural signals from their legs and it can walk. Now, that would be good. I would appreciate that. And if you wear the upper part of the suit, you can lift twice your own weight. So for old people, that would be wonderful. What you don't want to see is a kind of enhancement happening so that, on the one hand, I'm talking about these being used for old people or being used in therapy like heart machines or brain stimulants for epilepsy, for instance. Wonderful stuff. But then you could draw a line where you say, well, this isn't actually for therapeutic purposes. This is to enhance you. So you don't want to see people getting their arm cut off so that they have a better arm. That's when, and then once that starts happening, other people are, like you do in the United States in colleges, you use those drugs that are used for ADTH, like Ritalin. You're using them for exam revision. But it gets to the point where so many people are using them, if you don't use them, you're missing out and you could not progress, so you're forced to use them in some ways. And that's what we don't want to see with this sort of electronic stuff.
Absolutely not. Now, Professor, I read your article on CNN regarding a ban on killer robots. Tell us about that article and why you believe these robots should be banned.
I can't exactly remember that article. I mean, I write an awful lot. It was
right.
a couple of years ago, I think, maybe
yes.
2 years old or something. Yeah, but I can guess sort of thing it said because I don't say that many different things. Well, the reason why I want them banned, I started off wanting them banned for one reason, but now I have broader reasons. And to begin with, that was back in 2006. I read a lot of military plans, roadmaps, particularly in the US. Because you're IT there, and it's been much harder to get information from elsewhere, but we're getting it. And what I saw was, it was like a lot of people in the military and the people writing the roadmaps and plans seemed to have a very science fiction notion of robots. It wasn't based on reality, I thought. And they were talking about developing weapons that I could see couldn't do what they really wanted. I could see no way that these weapons could comply with the laws of war, like the Geneva Convention, the international humanitarian law, because I couldn't see how they were going to be able to discriminate between civilian and enemy targets,
right.
particularly combatants and children or wounded soldiers or surrendering soldiers, and especially in insurgent warfare or in the fog of war. How on earth were they going to do this? How were they going to develop a proportional response? So, the law is that in order for use, you have to be able to use it proportionally, and that means it has to be proportionate to direct and concrete military advantage. There's no machine that can calculate that. It's not an algorithmic thing. It's a feeling that, and a very experienced commander looks around, thinks through the facts, and decides on the fly. And an hour later, it might be completely different.
Right, there's a human element.
Yeah, it's a very strong human element. You have to think, well, if we attack this target, villagers will be really fed up with this and they'll cut off our supply chain. It's all those kinds of, a lot of different factors. And it's like, you can't say, why it can't be on a program. You can't, for instance, say, Osama bin Laden is worth 25 old ladies, 50 people in wheelchairs, 100 children. You can't put a number to it.
Right.
So that's very hard. And those are the kinds of things. Would you trust a robot?
Right.
to check the legitimacy of a target. These things can't be guaranteed, especially an autonomous robot. It can work fairly well, but a lot of the time it won't work properly and it'll do something wildly wrong, and that's what we want to avoid. But, since those days, when I first started writing about it, then people started talking about the morality of the thing. Do we really want a machine to delegate the decision to kill a human to a machine? So, just in case your listeners don't really know what a killer robot is, let me just reiterate what that is. It's simply a device, a weapon system that can go out on its own once it's been launched, track and select its very own them without any human supervision. Okay. So, Is that morally a good thing? And there's some debate, because there's some people who say, well, if you do enough research, these could actually be more accurate than humans. And, I do that. And the other thing they say is, well, robots don't get angry, they don't seek revenge, they don't commit rape, they obey their orders. And this is very short-sighted, because what these people are forgetting is that we're talking about weapons here. And the same people who are going to, use rape as a weapon of war will just now have robots to be able to help them do it, to round up women, and then they can rape them more effectively.
Wow. The
same people who want to seek revenge can use robots to seek revenge. The same people who get angry can use robots to kill people. So it's very short-sighted to think, robots won't do these things, but they forget that they're under the control of humans who are sending them out. So, that's the moral issue. But for me now, the really big issue, when I really think it through, and my committee, the International Committee for Robot Arms Control, UN delegates this year, called 10 Problems of Global Security. Now, I'm not going to go over all of these here, but just to say that, when people in the United States are saying things like, well, the good thing about autonomous weapons is we've lost our edge with missile technology, so let's gain it back with autonomous weapons. They will give us big advantage. We're not having to send in troops into war zones, so we can send in robots instead that will save soldiers' lives. And this is very, very short-sighted and what I call a blinkered position, because what they're forgetting is what this will do is it will create an arms race. There will be massive proliferation. These things will be exported, they'll be sold everywhere, and then you've lost your military edge again. The soldiers' lives are not being saved because other people have these autonomous weapons.
Right.
And I see, various these incredible scenarios, and it's always about swarms of robots, right? There's the idea of
You there, Professor? Professor Sharkey.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
fine.
lost you for a while there.
Yeah, we lost connection, but we're back. Now,
Okay.
I just
I'm not sure I lost connection, but I was talking for quite a while.
Oh man. Well, just continue where you left off. We got
I'm not
most
sure
of it.
Where did you get as far as it being short-sighted?
Yes.
Okay, and I was talking about one of the big things that you see in these sort of strategic documents is that plan to use swarms in the Pacific, and it explains exactly how they will use it and how they will manage to defeat the Chinese, who are outnumbering the United States greatly.
Right.
But as I pointed out to these think tanks, they're imagining that in 20 years the US will have all of these great weapons. But in all of the scenarios they talk about, they imagine China being in exactly the same position as it's in today.
Wow.
Not really thinking that they will also be developing like crazy, and probably much faster than the United States, I would imagine, because they've got lots of cash and they're putting a lot of money into their military now. And they make things really cheap there, so they could actually be ahead in 20 years' time. So these things are sort of slightly crazy. And you imagine what they're talking about. We're talking here about increasing speed. DARPA now have the HTV-2 program, where they have the Falcon
Yes.
system. Falcon can fly at 13,000 miles an hour, right? So we're talking about really high-speed systems. Now, you imagine China has these, Russia have these, Korea have these, all sorts of countries have these, and they're traveling at really high speed. Imagine triggering. You accidentally trigger a war. It could be over before anybody can stop it. And who's going to press the stop button? Because everyone who presses the stop button has lost. So you get all these accidental triggerings of war. When you're talking about swarms of weapons going at high speed, the big problem from a computer science perspective, and any computer scientist will tell you this, when you have two unknown programs facing each other, they will have combat programs on board, and nobody's going to reveal their combat program, because if you reveal it, it can be defeated. So it'll be very secret. When they meet each other, no one on this planet can tell you what's going to happen.
Right.
And that is really scary. So those are the big issues I have with autonomous weapons.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe we should give these developers of these robots, these military developers, a morality test, just to see, how if they're a good guy or a bad guy. And I was watching the new RoboCop movie, and it depicts exactly what you said. I mean, these warfare robots, they couldn't tell the difference between, let's say, insurgents and even children, and they ended up killing a child.
Yeah, that I thought there's this, you're talking about the scene in Iran. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Scene which is the most horrifying thing, and I can imagine it kind of being like that, except for the really smart ones.
Right.
They were not. I don't know when that could happen, but it's possible. And that was a scene that I thought was really accurate.
Absolutely.
Particularly the autonomy and just zooming people. And it's ridiculous. I think it is really a very frightening prospect.
Well, it made my skin crawl, Professor. Now, I wanted to ask you. It seems that Boston Dynamics and Google have teamed up to create a lot of bizarre robots. I mean, I remember reading Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury's book,
Yeah.
and there was this mechanical dog, and now they have this robot called the Cheetah. They could sprint almost, I believe, 45 miles an hour, and it could carry up to 400 pounds. I mean, what do you make of this alliance between Google and Boston Dynamics?
Well, that's certainly faster than any human can run. Well, as I said earlier, I think that it's not really an alliance with Boston Dynamics and Google, by the way. Boston Dynamics now belong to Google.
Oh, wow.
They bought them.
Right.
But I don't think they're not going to be. I think that they might be using them as delivery robots. I think.
Yeah, pizza delivery.
Google won't say what they're being used for, but they've got the autonomous cars. They're now doing a run of big 6-wheel trucks in Nevada, autonomous trucks, and Google are really into delivery. So what I can imagine Google going for, and they've not said this, but an autonomous delivery van pulls up to your door. A two-legged robot gets out, walks up to your door, knocks on the door, gets you to sign for your parcel, gives it to you, and gets back in the truck, and off they go again. I can see that.
Wow.
I don't think it's going to be military, but DARPA will
Hope
still
not.
own the ones that they paid for.
Wow.
So I think maybe Google did us a service by taking those away. But, just to go back to something you said earlier, and I don't know if you've ever interviewed weapons manufacturers. It's quite a good, I have, and it's quite a good thing to do. And you might say to them, you're asking if they'll take a morality test. And,
yes.
And I asked one guy, I said, who's making cluster munitions, right? And I said, well, are you not concerned about this? Do you sleep? Does that affect your sleep at night when you're sleeping? He said,
right.
No, why would it? He said, why would it? I'm only making them. I'm not using them. And I found that's the general attitude. People might be very moral, and was a nice guy. He had a dog, he had kids, and he was a perfectly nice guy. And I think people develop this kind of moral buffer where they tell themselves a little story. And the little story they tell themselves is, well, they're looking for these and I just make them. I don't really agree with their use, but, it's up to them, really.
Right. Now, Professor, can robots experience
Get through
emotions?
to them that it's not up to them.
Right. Right. Now, Professor, can robots experience emotions like fear, courage, or love, for that matter, or could they even dream? Could they do that yet?
You said fear there, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you said beer, actually.
Do they drink beer too?
No. But what a robot is getting better at doing is to convey emotional expressions. And they're also getting better at, there's an automated technique developed for a human classification thing, so that humans can try to understand the emotions of other humans. And there was a TV program in this, Liar, Liar, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, they're really good people who can use this classification technique to tell whether you're lying or not.
Right.
Try to automate this, so they try to put it on robots so they can detect what kind of emotion. It's not that accurate. You can fool it quite easily. So they might be able to detect an emotion and then respond appropriately with a smile or a little frown or something like that. But there's no feeling there whatsoever. They don't feel any emotion. They don't feel jealous. They could behave jealously. Supposing you had somebody petting another robot, the robot could behave as if it was jealous, but it's not feeling any jealousy. There's no feeling in there. It's just a programmed machine. And there's people who say, well, you know, there's no reason why eventually robots won't be able to feel. And I don't know if that's true or not. There's no way of telling that. But certainly
Right.
at the moment, I can see no way.
Wow. You know, that
Seems to me quite chemical, isn't it?
Yes. And it kind of reminds me of a story I heard about the Toshiba robot, Kenji, who apparently, I don't know if it's a hoax or not, but apparently it fell in love with one of its programmers. Did you hear about that?
No. I think that's very unlikely. Yeah. I think it's probably nonsense. We're not at that stage yet. I think to experience things, you need to be sentient. You need to be conscious.
Exactly.
Well, you certainly need to be sentient. You need to be. I mean, our animals can feel things. My dog certainly seems to feel emotion in some ways. Certainly can feel jealousy. Although I can't really tell. I can't get into its head. And people say, well, how do you know that humans feel emotion?
Right.
How do you know that they're not just doing the same as animals? Well, it turns out that I'm a human. And I certainly can feel emotion, and I just have to make the assumption that other humans are like me. They might not be, it's possible, but I think it's unlikely.
Wow. Speaking of emotions, you know, it's very bizarre to me that I hear that they're developing robotic sex partners. I mean, what would that do to the meta-consciousness of humanity? I mean, there wouldn't, like you said, there wouldn't be any reciprocation.
Yeah, I've looked at this quite a bit because I used to teach, you know, in teaching robot classes, I cover everything, and I cover
Right.
sex robots. One of the things the students do, they always laugh and say how ugly they are, that, you know, if you're going to have sex with a robot, they could at least make it good looking, you know, like that Roxy thing, ROXXY.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is, it looks really ugly, but but the thing is, I thought, well, this is crazy to begin with. Then BBC here had a documentary on it, and they had these guys on there who are quite open about the fact that they really want to have sex with robots. They're saying a robot can't hurt you, it can't leave you, and, you know, this is guys that have been hurt badly by women.
Right.
But there was one guy that he actually goes to an erotic hypnotist to get his girlfriend hypnotized into being a robot.
Oh,
Because
my
he
God.
can't have sex with her unless she behaves like a robot. So there's certainly weird cases. But what I looked at to sort of get some idea of, you know, what this means, I looked at this thing called, in South Korea, the laws were so heavily against prostitution that they started having, what do you call them? Not a harem, bordellos, you know, the sort of brothel. That's
Right.
They had doll brothels, where they had these incredibly good-looking dolls. And they became incredibly popular, and people would really fall for their robot doll and want that. They wouldn't come in if they couldn't have that doll. They're pretty hygienic, really. You can, you know, unplug its bits and clean them. But they were so popular there that they became really popular in Japan. and were dolls to real women. I mean, there's something sick about these people doing this, but,
wow.
but they prefer it to dolls. So if you turn it into a robot, if you make it hips move a bit and do a few other things, you can imagine that it could be extremely popular. But the ones I've seen, I mean, they're. I did a performance, a talk at the London Love Festival of Love, and I took some videos with me. And one that really got the audience was this male robot, and it's got a 3 foot long penis that it stands waggling about. You know, it's quite crazy.
Dear God!
But they're pretty crude at the moment. I mean, you see the male one; it can just do kind of motions, and you know, the female robot can do a bit more, but it's mainly just moving, essentially, and it can do some oral sex as well. I mean, I don't know if people would trust doing kind of thing with a robot because the gears could catch on you and rip you to pieces. But
Absolutely.
I have no real moral objection. I mean, I would not be. I mean, for me, a robot is a lump of inanimate material, so I would have no desire for this at all. But sex toys have been around for a very long time, and I couldn't really have a strong moral objection to it, except. I suppose my big concern is if your first sex as a teenager was with these, what sort of feeling would that give you towards the opposite sex? Because you can kick it around, you can thump it, you can hit it, you can do whatever you want to them. So what kind of way would that make you think?
I mean, I think it would disturb the overall fabric of society because we want to, as males, we want to impress the other sex. We want to go out and, buy a fancy car, get that paper route. So you can get the money to take the girl out. I mean, there's no incentive now. Now you can just go home and make out with your robot.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But you won't be able to afford the expensive car because the robot's expensive.
Oh,
but there is actually, for your listeners who are interested, I'm not going to give you a web address because I don't have one. But there is a company in the United States who are leasing these out already.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what to make of it. I don't particularly like it, but I think it could be quite a sort of, not widespread in use.
Right.
I think it'd be more of a sort of funny thing. Who knows? 50 years' time, 100 years' time, who knows?
Right. I believe this is referred to in the Greek language as agalamatolephilia. Something like that.
So that's the love of machines, is it?
Yes.
The love of inanimate devices.
Right.
Well, you had kind of one of the very first robots, if sort of, you can't really call it a robot, but it was the Pygmalion myth.
Yes. We may have lost Professor Sharkey again. Can you hear us? And we are reconnecting right now with Professor Sharkey. Obviously, the NSA does not like us talking about robots, but we're connecting with Professor Sharkey, and let's go ahead and call him back. Let's go ahead, give him a call back. Thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. You're tuning into the Bruce Montalvo Show. Our guest is Noel Sharkey, and they're messing with us, folks. Skype's messing with us. They don't want a clear connection, but we're going to get it. I'll be damned. Here we go. We're calling the professor right now. See if he picks up. On Professor Sharkey right now. And again, we're having Skype problems, folks, but if you are tuning in, thank you for tuning into the show. It's a special broadcast.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after.
Professor Sharkey.
Hello, I'm very sorry about that. I don't know what's going on.
Oh man, I know what's going on. They don't want me to have you on the show.
You think so? Okay.
It's the powers that be at Skype.
I was just telling you about the Greek myth. So the sculptor,
right?
who made incredible sculpture that he fell, Galatea, that was the name of it. He fell in love with it, and he prayed to the gods, and they turned it into a real woman. And I think that's probably a lot to do with this. It's the first sort of sex robot, I would say.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, that is just one just kooky topic. Absolutely. Now, Professor, would it be possible to install the human mind into a robot's body? I mean, I saw this portrayed in the film Chappie.
Yes. And certainly not at present at all. I don't know. I don't know what the thing is about this is a lot of people talk about this. I mean, there's singularity people. There's a lot of people talk about transhumanists,
Right.
about downloading the mind into a machine, and that's easy to say, really, because it's exploiting a mystery.
Right.
After years of studying psychology and the mind, we don't know what a mind is, and people say it emerges from a brain. And it is quite likely that a mind really requires a biological machine to run. We don't know that. I mean, obviously we are machines in a sense, but we're biological machines, and we have particular patterns
Right.
and particular kind of ways that we interact. Our cells interact with each other, the way they interact within themselves. So it's possible that this might be completely impossible. But what you could imagine is somehow putting a brain into a machine. At the moment, you couldn't keep the brain alive for long enough, but you might one day be able to take a human brain and transplant it into a machine. I mean, it's more like you're putting, instead of thinking of a brain going into the machine, it's more like you gradually put on robotic throughout your body until all you're left with is your brain and nervous system.
Right.
But to me, this is the most horrible thing. Can you imagine supposing you could download your brain into a computer? I would not like to wake up and discover that my mind, not my brain, my mind was inside a computer. I mean, that would be awful.
Yeah, RoboCop didn't like that either.
No, he did not like it. And I think he was, I'm really with Murphy there completely.
Absolutely.
I don't like it. I don't think it's possible, but, who knows? I'm a scientist. I can never say impossible, but, we really don't know enough yet, and I don't know. I mean, people always think, every century you look at, I mean, I've read a lot of the history of technology and history of mind. I'm also a psychologist was one in the past with a PhD in psychology. And every generation, every century you look at, people think they know it all.
Right.
And we think know it all. We don't know very much at all. And we're really developing really well in terms of AI, and we're really developing really well in terms of robotics. But in terms of the mind scientists, I mean, we're doing all this brain scanning now, and maybe we will discover something, but we're still very much in the very, very early stages of discovering what a mind is, I would say, or what consciousness is. So when AI people talk about, we've nearly got a sentient robot, or we've nearly got a conscious robot, I don't think they really understand what they're talking about. And also, when people say we've nearly got a sentient thing, I don't think there's any such thing as nearly conscious or nearly sentient. It's like being nearly pregnant. You either are or you aren't.
Exactly.
We're certainly not there.
Wow. Now, Professor, what are some of the advances you see developing in the field of roboprosthetics?
Well, one of the big advances was the idea of putting, if you catch somebody early enough, you put silicone on their arm and pull out the neural fibers so you can connect them directly to a prosthetic device. So that wasn't an advance in the prosthetics; that was an advance in the preparation stuff. But I was on a panel with a German guy, who was demonstrating his robot hand because he had lost his hand. And I can't remember what the device was called, and he'd been given it free because he's made a couple of programs. He's a German guy whose name slips me at the minute, but he's done programs on prosthetics on TV. He's very smart, good guy, academic. And he was demonstrating this, and it had so many different modes. Like, he had a mode for holding his phone. Mm-hmm. He had modes for picking things up. He had modes for everything, really. And it all operated from his iPhone. And on the panel, we had a very famous newsman called Jon Snow who was asking the questions, and he was making out this is wonderful. And then I suddenly introduced the topic of what about people hacking into this?
Right.
Because it was quite extraordinary. And so he said, oh, what? And so I took the guy's iPhone from him. I didn't twist his arm to do it. I mean, I just said, could I have your iPhone for a minute with the controller? And I handed it to Jon Snow and said, why don't you try doing a few things? And he was, by touching this, he was able to operate the guy's hand and make it do all sorts of things.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the guy tells us this isn't even passworded. So somebody 1,000 miles away could operate it. I know this wasn't directly the question you asked me about the most advanced in prosthetics, but the big worry always with all of these devices, if you've got computer devices, they can be hacked.
Absolutely. I mean, you see that happening with cars. I mean, people drive around these new cars, and some people suspect they could be hacked.
Well, they are being hacked.
Yes.
I saw a news piece last week about a SUV being hacked. A Jeep. It was a Jeep. Was hacked. Some guy sitting on a hill with a laptop hacked in and made it spin around and move about. And I've seen a Toyota being hacked, so they jammed the brakes on, turned the steering wheel. So, never mind driverless cars, for goodness sake.
Absolute insanity.
They're going to be an easy target. If you hack into those, you can use them as a weapon.
Yes. That's very scary. But,
another big worry I have really is, when I say we're at the UN now trying to get a ban, and we're doing very, very well on these autonomous weapons. And it's a committee called the CCW to ban weapons that are going to cause unnecessary suffering or injury. So we're working hard at that. But it turns out that even if we get a complete ban for the use in war, it would not stop them being used in civil society. And tear gas is a good example. That's completely banned in war, and yet the police can use it. So my big worry is that these things coming back from war and haunting civil society and infringing our rights. And I'm starting to see this now happening. I mean, I was worried of this 6-7 years ago, and now it's actually coming to fruition. And a couple of recent things, I'm just changing the subject onto this because it's something that I want to get everybody to know about. In South Africa now, there's a company called Desert Wolf, and they're making these things called the skunk drone. And it's one of those sort of things that's got 8 propeller, and they've sold them to 25 mining companies. And they say also that they've sold them to law enforcement agencies abroad, although they won't say who they're for. And what these things do is they deliver pepper spray, tear gas, and they fire plastic balls. And they're being used to disrupt striking miners striking. So used against civil disobedience. And this is a really bad step. But closer to your home in Texas, of course, we all know about Texas, and I don't think there's anywhere but Texas would have these yet. But there's a company called Chaos Computing, and if anybody wants to go on YouTube and look for their Cupid robot, it's a quadcopter, and it's called Cupid because what it does is it flies above your property. So you imagine in Texas it's flying above your backyard, and somebody comes in and it says, leave here immediately. And if they don't leave, it fires a taser dart at them. That's why it's called Cupid. And it keeps them under an electric shock until the police arrive.
Dear
and
God.
On YouTube, when they show this, they show the office intern being taken down. But before that, they show the office intern getting a check for his heart and all his kind of, bodily functions before they taser him. But an intruder won't get that. If you've got a pacemaker, you're dead immediately.
Right.
But this is the kind of thing that I can see coming. And it's like, people will say, well, this is against our rights and we're never going to see it. And then people were saying that about CCTV cameras in the United States as well. But there you are. There they are.
They're here. Absolutely.
These things just creep in by themselves.
Yeah, we don't make a stand to keep these intrusions of our civil liberties from happening. It was just let it happen and, just keep on eating popcorn,
Yeah, because it just keeps happening very, very slowly, very slowly.
Absolutely. Now, Professor, I saw your episode on William Shatner's Weird or What, and it was a great episode, by the way, one of my favorites. And
I didn't see it. I did it, but I didn't see it.
Oh, it was great. It was great.
It
was awesome. It's on YouTube, actually. You could check that out whenever you have some free time.
Yeah, it was a real. It was a real delight for me to be on the show because, obviously, I was a Star Trek fan right back in the 1960s.
Right.
So to be in the show with William Shatner was like kind of a major thing for me.
That's right. And in Star Trek they had the Borg, and that's what people are worried about. They're worried about this AI takeover, causing the end of the world. But you stated that it's not possible because robots do not have common sense. I mean, they basically do what we program them to do. I mean, they are moronic slaves.
Yeah, I can't speak about the distant future. I think, as far as I know, the other guys on the program were talking about a 10-year window.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of looking at the end of the world in 10 years by these machines taking over. But, there's a great thing is that, well, not a great thing necessarily, but robots could take over the world, I now think, but they don't have to be smart to do so. We're seeing such massive automation in every walk of life. It's really time that the human species sat down and decided what control will we cede to robots.
Right.
Now, favourite science fiction writers now is a guy called Daniel Suarez, and very modern science fiction writer, and he's a real tech guy. He was a CEO of a Silicon Valley tech company. Then he became a best-selling writer, so he doesn't do that tech stuff anymore. But he's really in tune. And he's got a book called Demon and another one called The Kill Decision. And in Demon, he explains how really, really dumb robots take over the world because people allow them the power. And they are really dumb because when they ask humans a question, they say, sorry, you must answer yes or no. but yet they still have they can still take over. It's still possible for machines to be given the power to rule our lives, but yet not be smart machines.
Wow. Absolutely.
And that is the scary thing to me. We don't have to wait for them to be.
Right. Now,
you're seeing this automation everywhere. I mean, workers aren't aware. I mean, when I go to the supermarket now, there's scanning machines. I don't know if you have them.
Yes. And once again, we are reconnecting with Professor Sharkey. It is he's out there in England, folks. There's a lot of feedback between the satellites. Who knows? But trying to reconnect with him right now so we could finish up the show strong. Let's see. Connecting with him. Let's give him another call to end the show on a high note, folks. And we're connecting. And we're still trying to connect, folks. If you're listening, it's been a very entertaining talk with Professor of AI and Robotics out of Sheffield University, Professor Noel Sharkey. I mean, just some riveting information. But like he said, I mean, AI is moronic. You can see here we can't even connect via Skype. Bill Gates is not letting us do it. Here we go. But I appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen, tuning in to this very special broadcast of the Bruce Montalvo Show. Noel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm back again.
Great.
Lost me again.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for the interruptions. We just want to finish up strong here. We're wrapping up. Just see if you can finish your point, Professor.
Sure. I can't remember what we were talking about there.
Right. Well, we were talking about common sense, how these robots, they basically have what we program into them. They do what we tell them to do.
Oh yeah, I was talking about the idea of you go into a supermarket now, and all we can just go up in the UK certainly and scan our own stuff in, and the machine tells us, it looks to make sure we've put it into our bag, it weighs it, it does all these things for us. So automation's beginning to take over, and the AI is now being used extensively in medicine. But I personally think that humans should always be strongly in the control, because these machines will de-skill us to the point where we, instead of going to the doctor, we go to a machine, it diagnoses us, books us in for surgery, and robots do the surgery. And that, to me, would not be a good point to be in. That's what I mean by robots taking over the world, us ceding control to these machines.
Absolutely. Kind of like the Disney movie WALL-E, where the people become fat and complacent and the robots or the spaceship does everything for them, even feed them.
That's right. But, that's all very well, but we are humans, and I think humanity, it's still important to be a human and live like a human. I believe so, anyway.
Absolutely. Well, Professor Sharkey, I know you're a busy man. I know you got a couple of interviews lined up today, and I want to thank you so much for being on the program. Hopefully next time when you're on, we won't have so many interruptions, but I do appreciate you taking the time to come on and enlighten us with your knowledge, sir.
Well, thanks very much, Bruce. It's been a real pleasure and great questions, and it's really great to get the opportunity to get the message out.
Thank you so much, Noel. Thank you. We look forward to having you on many more times when you have the time, sir.
Okay, and I hope I can come there sometime and do it live. So
that would be great. We would love to have you. I mean, we know you come to New York. You're at the UN, the evil UN. But thank you so much for being on the show, Mr. Sharkey, Professor Sharkey.
Bye then. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was a action-packed, jam-packed show. I mean, I was literally on the edge of my seat fighting robots for you. I took on Skype right there. You saw it, ladies and gentlemen. Our moronic robots trying to take over the world. I don't think they got a chance, ladies and gentlemen, and neither does Noel Sharkey. And you've been listening to the Bruce Montalvo Show, the most electrifying show in alternative media. Thank you for joining us, and a reminder that we're on every Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're listening to the excellence of radio execution. I'm Bruce Montalvo signing out from the epicenter of cool, Brooklyn, New York.
Not the music you were expecting? Know what you're getting into with your music and your internet. Straight Up Internet is $50 all in, no hidden fees. And like this music, you can even pause it. Straight Up Internet. Know what you're getting into.
Banner University Medicine is dedicated to bringing the best medical care to the Tucson community. Our newest hospital was designed with your health in mind. With 228 private patient rooms, 22 operating rooms, and more than $50 million in patient care technology, your care and comfort are our top priority. Banner University Medicine, making Tucson's future brighter and your visits easier. Now open at 1625 North Campbell Avenue. Online at bannerhealth.com/University Tucson.